All right, don't adjust your dials. For the first time in what feels like a month, the Suns UCF Live is actually live. Trace is on assignment. You'll see him in a few minutes here. I'm Adam, and I'm happy to be joined by a newly relocated Brian W. Peterson. You can find his work on sunsucf.com, one of the lead columnists on their website. Brian, thanks for joining us tonight, man. How are you feeling? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm a little upset I didn't get the Vegas invite to travel along with you guys out there. Although I heard that the temperatures were nice and steamy, so hope you brought your sunscreen.
Yeah, no, you didn't need sunscreen. What I needed was some sort of a motorized scooter to get me from the Mirage to the Bellagio. But we'll touch on all that later. But in the show tonight, we've got some fun stuff. Traces live at Burger U for Scout School. We'll get to him in a second. We have John Curts joining us. He's a sort of a Big 12 insider, has a new Big 12 newsletter out. So we'll talk all things Big 12. But obviously, Brian, the really kind of the news that broke today, Wayne Dench, the Wayne Dench Trust, pledged another $2.5 million to UCF football. The practice field will now be known as the Wayne Dench Practice Complex. And this also represents a commitment to the Haley Football Gateway Project, which is being built on UCF's campus, Brian. So another week, another multi-million-dollar donation to UCF. Obviously, Wayne Dench, not a name that's unfamiliar to UCF fans. He's obviously been around for a long time, legendarily helped kind of revive the program, a bunch of years ago, Brian. So $2.5 million. It's not quite Brian Peterson money, but it's still a pretty significant amount for UCF.
Let me tell you, I wish I had the money to donate $2.5 million to UCF. Terry's been working overtime trying to get those donations, bringing in the dollars. He announced a couple of weeks ago that Ken Dixon was donating several $1 million. They changed Gemini Boulevard to the Ken Dixon Way now, and that got people nice and riled up. So Wayne Dench said, well, hold the phone. I got to make a donation here. I got to keep up with the Joneses. But as you alluded to, Wayne Dench, everybody knows that name at UCF in the athletics department. So that's good news, and we'll take that money, hopefully, and we'll run with it.
It's a fun trivia fact at some point to go down the rabbit hole of where would UCF be without Wayne Dench and his $1 million donation back in the mid '80s to help save the program. But we have plenty of time for that. But I mentioned, the practice field's now the Wayne Dench Practice Complex, and they will be in use very soon, Brian. On the 28th, Sunday the 28th, the team will meet for meetings and sort of a kickoff, and we are on the grass, as Heupel would say, on the 29th. Trace Truckle already getting his 10-second clips ready and organized, Brian. So we are about 2 weeks away from practice. It doesn't feel real just yet, but with 2 weeks out, what's your mindset like right now? Are you excited, anxious, nervous? You just can't wait to get football started again? With 2 weeks to go, where are you at right now?
I starve for some football action, Adam. Let me tell you, I'm ready. Bring the season on. I don't care how hot it is. I want to be down or up in Orlando. I want to be at those games. I want to see what this team can do. There's been a lot of talk about whether the team is underrated or overrated, and what these new transfers are going to mean to the team this year, and what kind of season we're going to have. I'm ready. Let's go.
Well, Brian is fired up. So again, we got a couple weeks before practice starts. I had the aforementioned Trace Trelko, as I said, will I'm sure be out there taking short video clips. And Trace is actually right now at Burger U. For those who don't know, we have entered a sponsorship with the Orlando Sports Foundation, which puts on the Cure Bowl. The Staff DNA Cure Bowl is December 20th at Camping World Stadium. They have an event tonight. I think it already wrapped, but our very own TV Zone Trace Trelko was on site at that event tonight. It's called Scout School. And Trace is coming to us live from Burger U. Trace, how was Scout School? What are you doing out in Burger U tonight?
You mentioned it earlier, the Cure Bowl, which is a sponsor of the Sons of UCF, holding Scout School. What does it mean? It means that they have members of the Orlando Sports Foundation that scout teams for the Cure Bowl. Just 154 days away from that game, 42 days away from the start of UCF football, but never too early for the Cure Bowl to start getting organized. Earlier, I spoke with UCF Athletics Hall of Famer Alan Gooch, who's also the CEO and executive director of the Cure Bowl, who explained what this evening was all about. All right, explain to me Scout School. What's involved here?
Scout School is a little education on how to be a Bowl Scout. Now, all bowls, there's 43 bowls in the United States of America. All the bowls have members, and all the bowls have an opportunity to Bowl Scout. Each school would allow 2 bowl members to scout the game at that school. There are rules for doing that. You get credentials, you get opportunity to sit in the media box, opportunity to be on the field pregame, and then an opportunity to be on the field 2 minutes to go, typically in the fourth quarter. And then once the game is over, you have an opportunity to go to the post-game press conference at one of the teams. You would get to select that. But to do all that, first you have to be a member of a bowl. And we have memberships just like UCF Sports does. And so we'll be talking to our members tonight that are new and that have not scouted the process for doing that. And there is a process and procedures for that.
What are you asking them to look for when they're at one of these games?
Well, the most important thing when we have the big reason to have scouts go Bowl Scout games is to see mostly the travel, how the other team travels, the opponent that's coming into the stadium. Do they bring their band? Do they have a good alumni and a fan base that is traveling with the team? Because what that will tell you is that when they are assigned to a bowl, that they'll probably travel very well. So we want to know what it actually looks like, boots on the ground, because attendance figures, sometimes those can be messed with. And then you can hear from the AD at that school, oh yeah, we travel well, and these are our numbers, but we want to have somebody there seeing it for ourselves.
So Scout School just proof that bowl season is year-round for a bowl organizer.
Bowl season is year-round. So we're doing Scout School here in July. We'll have another Scout School in August, and most of the bowls do that. They want to get their members and their new members acclimated to what is going on, the process and the procedures, but they're also getting everybody geared up for football. Football media days are all taking place right now here in July, and we're getting our membership base ready for football this fall as well.
How many people do you need as scouts?
We have well over 200 members that are going to be doing this during the season, and we have 4 conferences that can be in our game: the American, the Sun Belt, Conference USA, and the MAC. They're our primary targets, the bowl tie-in for our game. And so we've got coordinators for each one of those conferences. And then we've got a coordinator that oversees all of that. And those are volunteer coordinators. But they take their job seriously. Obviously, if let's say App State is playing at North Carolina, there's a lot of people that are going to want to bowl scout that game, an opportunity to watch App State at North Carolina. But there is a pecking order for getting those 2 media credentials. So the longer you're a member, the better opportunity you have at getting those 2 credentials that will be assigned for those games.
So Scout School is serious stuff, but serious a little bit of networking, a little bit of fun.
No doubt. Yeah, when our members have the opportunity to take one of their clients or one of their staff members or their husband or their wife, if they would like, to the game. But somebody's got to be in charge of those 2 credentials. They have to go through the process of getting the credentials through our office, and that's the way it is for all bowls around the country.
So serious stuff. They learned that you can't cheer in the press box, which of course is something that I know covering UCF, and a lot of socializing. There was food, and these pink tickets mean that you get a couple of drinks. So in between our live hits tonight, I think I'm going to redeem at least one of my coupons. Coming up in our next hit, we're going to be talking with a seasoned scout who explains what the experience is like, and I'll have that for you coming up. For now, live at Burger U, Trace Shulko, Sons of UCF.
All right, well, let Trace get back to those drink tickets. I wonder what he's going to have. My guess is an IPA, Brian.
Probably an IPA if we know Trace.
He's a big IPA. He's a 1 IPA guy. I learned that in Vegas this week. He's a 1 IPA guy and done. He's not here for 2 or 3. He's 1 and out. But thanks, Trace, for heading out to Burger U. And again, thanks to the Atlanta Sports Foundation, the Cure Bowl, Coach Gooch, Hall of Fame Coach Alan Gooch for letting us be a part of this. Brian, I mentioned Vegas. We were out at a Big 12 Media Day. If you've missed anything from our trip out there, go to our YouTube page, Sons UCF. Is how you can find that. We've got a ton of coverage out there that will keep you entertained, Brian. But you obviously were hopefully enjoying that coverage. What was your takeaway from Big 12 Media Day? What did you take from what you heard on stage, on the podiums, and some of the scrum interviews that we were able to kind of pull together from our time in Vegas?
Media days is a funny thing, and it doesn't really matter if you're in the Big 12 or the SEC or the ACC or some other conference. There's not a lot of substantive information that you really learn at these media days. They're really more pomp and circumstance for the most part. It's nice for us to be able to get our mics in front of the players and the coaches and ask them questions like that, but you're not really going to learn much about the team until this team hits the field and starts to play. But the thing about media days this year in particular is for the Big 12, we're trying to stake that claim that we're the #3 conference, in college football. And Brett Yormark has said it over and over again. They are open for business. And I'm sure that he was really drilling that point to the rest of you guys while you were in attendance there at media days. That was the big takeaway that I got from this, was that the Big 12 is here. We're big, we're flashy, and we're not going anywhere. And that's, if he can hold that, then that'll be great for UCF in the future.
Yeah, it was clear, Ryan, from his time on stage. You think of conference commissioners and they drop a lot of student athletes and tradition and pomp and circumstance. It is clear Brett Yormark is a businessman. He is here to run a business. He sees this conference as a business. He talked about adding value, which is something you normally hear in meetings with shareholders and meetings with stock price. He talked over and over about adding value. So it's clear he looks at this from a completely different perspective. And, Trace had a really good question and basically said, how many schools is too many? And he kind of dodged the answer, didn't really give an answer one way or the other. And so obviously, there's a lot going on in the news. Our next guest, John, will probably give us some insight on that. But I thought the UCF stuff was interesting, Brian. You had a column this week that's out on sunsucf.com that basically you kind of talk about, hey, listen, to your point, this is talking season. This is the time everybody gets in front of microphones. Everybody tells everybody what they want to hear. Everyone's in the best shape of their life. Everybody loves their team. Everything's a brotherhood. And so what do you make of all this stuff too? I thought Gus had an interesting commentary. Trace had a chance to talk to him one-on-one. And I want you to hear this, Chloe. I thought Gus had an interesting sort of, reflection on year one of the Big 12 for UCF.
It wasn't good enough. I mean, we lost close games. We weren't physical enough. We didn't coach good enough. It was a self-evaluation for me. I'd never been through anything like that, but it was good to step back and, okay, we need to address this, we need to address that, we need to address that. So we did that. We feel really good about our roster now. We made some changes in our staff, which I think also will be a benefit. So now we just got to do it on the field. I mean, this is a great day to talk about everything, but bottom line is we got to get on the field. But I'm excited about coaching this group.
All right, Brian, coach feels good. Do you feel good about where UCF is right now with everything that you have at your disposal from a knowledge standpoint?
Yeah, I can't say that you can't like where the Knights are coming into this season, right? We had a pretty good transfer season. We picked up some key pieces that we needed on defense. We brought in KJ Jefferson for quarterback. It's funny to hear Coach talk about, that last season was a bit of a letdown. Obviously the fans feel that to some degree. But to hear Coach Malzahn actually echo that sentiment is something new, right? If you've listened to Coach and you've been to any of his interviews, and he gives the same spiel over and over again, right? He talks about RJ Harvey and the potential that he has, bringing in KJ Jefferson and being the next Cam Newton and all that fun stuff. But to hear him actually reflect and say last season wasn't good enough, and he's referred to that a couple of times and mentioned that he didn't do a good enough job coaching, makes me feel better before the season begins, right? Traditionally, I feel like UCF does better when we got that chip on our shoulder and we're playing like we have something to prove. So if that is the mindset the team has going in, and that is what Gus is pushing, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it was a theme, Brian, throughout the entirety of media day is, we talked to a lot of coaches, a lot of other players, and, everyone had really nice things to say about UCF. Oh, hey, they're program on the rise and, like what they've done down there. You could tell that RJ and KJ specifically had a bit of a chip on their shoulder about proving who they were. I asked RJ directly, hey, your name's not mentioned as one of the best running backs. And his answer was essentially like, I'm going to show him. I talked to KJ about having that famous picture allegedly in his locker that says that Shedeur Sanders is the best quarterback. And he's like, hey, I've got to go out and prove that. So to your point, there is a bit of that chip on the shoulder mentality from UCF. And that was kind of evident throughout media day. It didn't help that UCF went on the same day Colorado went. That was obviously a bit of a circus and a lot of folks kind of hovering around, Dion and that team. BYU was also the same day. BYU has an outrageously large media contingency. I was not prepared for that, but there are a lot of folks that cover the Cougars, and so they had a lot of coverage. So UCF kind of fell in that middle pack where there wasn't a lot of conversation, not a lot of interest, and not a lot of talking to Gus. And you could kind of tell. I mean, I don't know Gus all that well, but you could tell he sort of bristled a little bit at that looked like too. So, but obviously we mentioned coaches. Trace is big on the polls. I don't know if you know this already, Brian, but he's big on the polls. This week's poll was, are you satisfied with the assistant coaches? 83% of the audience said yes, 17% no. Obviously, Gus alluded to that. He had to make some staff changes, notably on the offensive side. He brings in Tim Harris. On the defensive side, a huge change. Ted Roof and strength and conditioning. Let's not forget about that. Anthony Kinsey comes in as strength and conditioning, Brian. So did the audience get this right? Are you satisfied with the assistant coaching staff right now for UCF?
Yeah, I think they got it right. I mean, I don't think that you can really give a no answer at this point in the offseason until we see, a couple games into the season, how the team is gelling together and what kind of results we're getting out of the games that we're playing. UCF Mike has alluded to it several times. Don't tell me about the transfer board. Tell me who's on the team when the team starts, right? So this kind of alludes to the same thing with the coaches, right? I don't care about the offseason so much. I want to see what the coaches can do when we actually put the ball in the dirt and start playing. So this is another preseason type poll that doesn't mean a whole lot in my opinion. But yeah, I don't think that the answer can be anything but yes right now.
All right, Trace, take note, Brian, not a fan of your polls. Also one reference to ball being in the dirt. But we talked about Big 12 Media Days. And if you want to talk about Big 12, there's probably nobody smarter out there right now covering the Big 12 than our first guest. His name is John Curts. You can catch him on a few different outlets. He's on the Kansas City Sports Network, and he has a new newsletter, Open for Business, which we'll get to in a little bit. But John, first off, thanks so much for hopping in tonight on the Sons UCF.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, it was cool to bump into you on our kind of our way out of Las Vegas. But I got to ask my first question. Coming out of that Big 12 Media Day, what's your big takeaway? What's your big takeaway from what you heard and sort of what the theme was of that Big 12 Media Day?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of break it into two parts, but I guess if you want an overarching theme, it just seems like it's a really exciting time in the league, and it's a very confident league. And that, to me, took two different pathways. Day one, it was a little bit more like the pathway of, like, I talked to Joey McGuire and he was saying, I brought up, hey, revenue sharing's happening now. SEC Big Ten schools, there's that huge revenue gap. And he was like, well, hey, wait, these SEC and Big Ten schools are all lying when they're recruiting against me because they're saying, hey, we're going to be so far out ahead of you money wise. Like, no, we're going to all be at that same revenue sharing number and it's going to be the same thing. So, like, why would you go play for a coach who's going to lie to you? And then Sonny Dykes, who's been in the national championship game at TCU. I asked him, like, do you think the Big 12 can win a national championship in this era? And his response was like, yeah, we definitely can. Like, don't forget, we were the last team to beat Michigan. Like, this absolutely is something that can happen. And Brett Yormark was busy while I was doing that on Radio Row, going up on stage, firmly asserting that the Big 12 was one of the top three conferences in America, which obviously is a shot fired at the ACC. And then later said, I'm not going to stop until we are number one. So it was just, I feel like his attitude kind of permeates everything. Then day two, it was much more about that confidence leaking into the storyline that's developed now with Clemson and Florida State, which is fascinating. And I'll be honest, I mean, going into Vegas, I wouldn't have given that any real credence at all. And I mean, I listen a lot to guys like Greg Flugar, who I think is great and has been a step ahead of the game on all this. And for a while, he's kind of been saying, like, hey, I don't think this SEC Big Ten thing is nearly as sure as people think it is for Florida State and Clemson. And turns out he was right. But even with that, I was not thinking, well, the Big 12 is a legitimate possibility. I mean, with everything that's happened, the barrage of headlines about it in the last week and a half, I'm now at the point where I'm like, oh, okay, man, I guess I believe it. And it started with Ross Dellinger dropping in his story that he wrote about day one, just had a line in there that was like, can Brett Yormark do enough to convince one or both of Florida State or Clemson to come to the Big 12? And I was like, okay, I guess this must have some real legitimate legs to it if Ross Dellinger is actually going to say that. And he did the interview with me where he said he thinks that they have already talked at least. And the story obviously has taken off from there. So it just feels to me like this conference has a lot of confidence, and they're not backing down. They are not at all content to say, hey, yeah, this revenue sharing thing is going to be really tough. We're going to have to just bow down and let this go. It seems to be everybody is on board with looking at whatever solutions are out there on the table, whether that's private equity, private capital, naming rights, whatever it might be. This league seems like it is rearing to go, and it really takes after the lead of guy's kind of a great white shark in Brett Yormark and the way he approaches things.
Well, you mentioned realignment. Let's stick there for a second. What are next steps, John? So obviously, to your point, Ross has a story. He kind of did a quasi walk back initially, and then to your point, I saw the conversation he had with you. I saw you had Jason Shearer on your show, obviously, who's done a really good job reporting on the Arizona move to the Big 12. So what happens next? Now we've got all this talking, we've got all this courting. Greg Sankey's out there saying, I'm not divvying up my pie right now. So the posturing has begun, talking season has begun. What happens next with this Florida State, Clemson, and/or ACC stuff?
Boy, it is going to be fascinating. And to me, the logic based on the way I just look at it would be like, well, I mean, the court cases are still ongoing. There's 4 of them in 3 different states, and they're at various stages, none of which are very close to being done. From the ACC standpoint, they definitely want to play like 4 corners. You know, if you think about the old basketball strategy, if you're playing high school hoops, just hold it in 4 corners, let the clock bleed, like go as long as you can, because they don't want to see their conference blow up or at best, I suppose, just lose their top 2 brands there. So it wouldn't seem to me like anything is going to happen really fast, especially if the stance really is from the Big Ten and the SEC, like we don't need you. Like we're not really interested right now. But you've had like Josh Pate for a while putting out there that he felt like July was, I mean, he said he had legal sources basically telling him July was when something could really happen. We know that the August 15th date is really important because that's the date that they would have to announce their intention to leave unless they want to have to wait another year, like tack another entire year on before they could get out of the conference. So it's like a part of me wants to say nothing's going to happen for a while, but the other part of me looks at it like, well, we're at July 18th. We're inside a month from August 15th, and we're obviously just a couple of weeks away from the end of the month when a lot of people had really speculated something was going to happen. So I don't know. It's not a great answer, but it's kind of it's really how realignment works. Like it's very difficult to predict. Maybe a little bit easier to predict last year, just based on the details and timing that we knew about the Pac-12's TV contract and where that was at, and the way the tea leaves started to form there. But I think there was a lot more urgency there where there's not as much with the ACC Florida State thing. So I don't know. I'd be curious to know if this latest round has like humbled Florida State in any way at all. And now maybe they'll go back to the drawing board a little bit, or be more content to play the long game more so than they were before, be a little bit less brash. That doesn't, you guys would know better than I, that doesn't seem to really be in Florida State's nature, but maybe this has done that to them. So we'll see.
John, sticking with realignment, let's kind of put, let's assume that Florida State and Clemson, just for argument's sake, are going to stay in the ACC, and they very well could. Now that you've been to this Big 12 media days and you've seen kind of the disarray that perhaps the ACC is in, and the Big 12, as Brett Yormark said, is open for business. In your opinion, do you see the Big 12 as the number 3 conference in college football? Do you think that we have a stake to that claim?
If Florida State and Clemson are still there, I think that is a tough putt to say that just based on pure sheer football, like power rankings, that you are the number 3 conference that's out there. I think really when he says that, obviously, I mean, he's a marketer, so he's going to say that. But also, I think if you're taking in the totality of just everything, I can understand why he says that, because, and I understand the question was, so to answer the question, like based on your scenario, like, hey, we're going to take realignment stuff out of it, Florida State and Clemson I would say no. Based on football, no. But based on the total picture, which right now obviously encompasses basketball, and I know ACC folks will shove this last NCAA tournament down my throat, which that's fine, but I would take the Big 12 10 times out of 10 just in the bigger picture right now with where the league is at in basketball. I think they've got the better basketball. I think they've got a much better commissioner. I mean, Jim Phillips has driven me crazy, to be honest, throughout the last couple of years with this holdup of playoff expansion, which, by the way, cost his league millions of dollars, with the way that Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti have now decided to split out the revenue. So better basketball, much better commissioner, at least comparable football, and better like depth, I would say, in the football conference, and then just stability, And I know people will say, well, it's because nobody wants anybody in the Big 12. Well, fine, but it works as stability now, and that's a really important thing if you want to be the third man standing here and the last of the rest that's not in this Power 2 world. So I would say when you're taking in the full scope of things in the conference, that it's a fair claim to say that the Big 12 is third right now.
I mean, going just purely on a revenue perspective, the Big 12 brings in more on a per school basis than the ACC does. So, I mean, if you're an athletic director and you're trying to pick, in a hypothetical scenario between going to the Big 12 or going to the ACC, I don't see how you can pick going to the ACC when the paychecks coming out of the Big 12 are what they are under what Brett Yormark has done.
Well, and that was just such a ridiculous news cycle there for a minute where, you had the Utah rumor that came out of, well, I say nowhere. It was a retired New York Post columnist who put that out there, some buzz that like Utah had a wandering eye for the ACC, and really stoked a lot of the flames. And it's funny the way it's played out. You can just see ACC fans now reacting and turning into the Pac-12 fans from last year, who were, and I get it. I understand it because I've been in their position before. You don't want your league to die and you're going to listen to the people that tell you what you want to hear. And like, I understand how it happens, but you had some wishful thinking, really believing like, oh, of course that's true. They'd rather be in the ACC and the academics and, not Truckstopville, USA, and all that stuff starts to come out. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very true. You would much rather be in the Big 12 right now. And I hate to keep harping on the same thing, but man, look at the leadership. And Brett Yormark's not perfect. I know I probably get labeled as, a guy who's really carrying a lot of water for Brett Yormark all the time. But the big picture stuff he nails. They have, the tiebreaker thing in football was a little bit of a mess last year. I think when it comes to like the day-to-day, like running a conference and the sport part of it, they have room for improvement, which makes sense because Brett Yormark didn't come from that world, right? He came from the world of literally entertainment at his last job and then professional sports before that. So it makes sense that they wouldn't be nails on that. But when it comes to the big picture stuff and surviving and knowing where to go, how to market, how to improve your standing, the guy's just aces with all of that. And so that to me would be really the biggest thing. I'm looking at, all right, two comparable conferences here. One of them is stable. One of them's not. One of them has an excellent leader and a guy who really gets what it takes in this day and age in college football. And the other seems to be kind of a dud who's a little bit stuck in the mud here. So that to me would make it a pretty easy choice.
Well, I can tell you, John, Brett Yormark is by far the best dress commissioner. I think that man was born to wear a suit. But let's go on the field for a second. Right now, how many teams do you think have a viable opportunity that you would say could play in the Big 12 title game? How many? 7, 8, 9? What's the number of teams that you think right now today viably could actually get to that championship game?
Okay, I'm going to have to count it out. I believe my list is 8. So I'm Oklahoma State, who was my pick to win the league, Utah, K-State, Kansas, go Iowa State, UCF. I'm pretty high on UCF. I think they have a lot of potential there. Oh boy, who am I missing here? Someone's going to be mad at me. West Virginia, that's 7.
Did you say Utah?
I did say Utah. So okay. West Virginia, I think then we're kind of at the borderline with like, how do you classify TCU, Texas Tech, or Colorado, I suppose. Maybe I would go 7. To me, there's a bit of a drop off there. I will say I was almost swayed a little bit on TCU at media days because there was a lot of talk about, hey, Josh Hoover just got thrown into the fire too early last year. He's actually really talented. Sonny Dykes glows about him. And they've got a lot of skill talent. They recruit better than anybody in the Big 12. UCF being the closest probably to them, but lately TCU has recruited better. So, if they have a quarterback, they can be in that conversation too. I guess I would stop the list, though, at those 7 that I mentioned.
Well, you mentioned UCF, obviously the team that we cover and the team that we kind of follow closely. You have them in that first grouping. I think a lot of UCF fans are sort of in that, what are we this year, right? There's a chip on the shoulder mentality. Last year, the only team to make a bowl game with the new 4, but still a disappointing season. Gus Malzahn staff changes, a ton of new transfers coming in. So from afar, what do you make of what UCF's done and their viability to actually contend in 2024 in the Big 12?
Well, first of all, a lot of my faith here is just based in Gus. I mean, this guy's one of 2 coaches in the league that's coached in a national championship game. And I don't think he gets enough credit for what he did in the SEC West in the shadow of Nick Saban at the peak of his powers. The guy was winning a lot of games at Auburn and beating Nick Saban, right? And takes a team to a national championship game. And he lasted, it was 8 years at Auburn. I did the math the other day, you'd have to go back 4 coaches to get through 8 years after him, right? You'd go to the next 4 coaches to get 8 total years at Auburn. The point being, Auburn's crazy. That's a pressure cooker and it's crazy and they run people off. And it was an accomplishment for him to stay at Auburn as long as he did, especially with Nick Saban right there and having to compete with that, let alone just being in the SEC West. So I think he's a guy that's been there and done that and is a really, really good head coach. And then, there's a reason KJ Jefferson's newcomer of the year in the league. They go pull who I think is a stud of a quarterback that was in a kind of a messy situation at Arkansas, just not a really conducive situation last year at Arkansas. And you pair him with Gus, man, then you add RJ Harvey, with what they have at running back. And UCF's another one of those schools, kind of like TCU. I'm like, I know how they recruit. I know they're going to have skill talent. So I'm pretty confident that offense is going to be a real problem to handle. And last year there was bad luck with the quarterback injury. I understand that that's a big part of it too. So I think the combination of now having your feet under you in the Big 12, having a coach in Gus Malzahn that gets it and has done it at the absolute highest level in the sport, having a great transfer quarterback to lead the charge and a stud running back and some definite talent on the offensive side of the ball, that's enough for me to believe that you got a chance in the Big 12. Obviously, to me, the question marks would still come on the defensive side. And I don't know. I'd be interested in what you guys think of Ted Roof, because I know, like at Oklahoma, I know he's a guy that's been around Brent Venables quite a bit, but I was kind of, I guess the way I'd view it is I'm like, Brent Venables is doing the defense, right? So how much was Ted Roof really doing there? So that would be my question. But hey, I put a lot of stock into Gus. I mean, he's definitely a guy that's been around and, as I said, been in the SEC. So I think if UCF has a halfway decent defense this year, they will absolutely have a chance.
John, you mentioned Colorado. We were going through the 7-8 teams talking about that. Now, obviously, the media, when they want to talk about something, they talk about Dion in Colorado. Shedeur Sanders has been named one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. Am I the only one that just doesn't believe that Colorado has put together a roster that's going to really be competitive to the point where people think they're going to be in this first season of the Big 12? Is it wrong to think that? How do you think that they're going to stack up against the rest of the conference?
I think they're a bowl team, but I don't know that their ceiling goes much higher than that, because I don't trust what they're doing in the trenches enough. And I know, and I've seen it in comments in my videos, which is funny. You can't win with Colorado. I've got people saying that I'm way too high on Coach Prime in Colorado. And then I've got the Colorado stands telling me that I'm a hater just because I'm saying, like, I think they're like a 6 or a 7 win team. So you can't win. And that's a part of the whole thing with Colorado. It's hard to have a real appropriate discussion about them. I just think with how much roster turnover they have, I get that they have the star power, but it's hard, man, to do that with that much turnover, especially on the lines. They got some transfers. I understand that. They got the number 1 offensive tackle in the class, and they're probably going to throw him right into the fire. It just seems like asking a lot to me, even if he was a really hyper elite recruit. So I'm in I need to see it mode there. I don't think Dion is a bad coach. I think he did a nice job. I think if any other coach would have gone there last year, I was trying to think of someone else who moved in the last cycle, but Brent Brennan, if you threw Brent Brennan at Colorado last year and he took him from 1 win to 4 wins and had the wins that he did and then lost the games that he did in the Pac-12, you'd be like, yeah, well, that makes sense. And seems like they made some progress there. I think the same. And obviously the attention that they're drawing to the program is really helpful to not only them, but the Big 12. But yeah, Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, notwithstanding, I just need to see a little bit more from the rest of the infrastructure with that whole operation before I trust it. I mean, the other thing is, like, just with the coaches, the whole offensive coordinator situation that they had last year, there's enough that still felt to me like, this just seems like a lot of turmoil to be going through for me to believe that this is going to really take a jump up to being conference title contender. But do I think they have enough talent to make a bowl game? Yeah, I think they probably do have enough talent to make a bowl game.
Put your head coach helmet, hat, whatever you want to call it, on for a second. Are you taking Shedeur Sanders or KJ Jefferson to be your quarterback in the coming season?
It's tough because I was actually thinking I was maybe going to put this out to Twitter pretty soon. Like, who do you think will be the first team All Big 12 quarterback by the end of the year? Because I understand why Shedeur Sanders gets the love right now. I wouldn't fight it too terribly hard, even though there are a lot of really good quarterbacks in this league, some of whom it's like I feel like everybody has some questions. Like, Shedeur Sanders has the NFL upside. He's definitely got that more so probably than anybody else in the league. But what's the infrastructure there? How's the offensive line going to be? That's really the big question mark. And, like, would Colorado win enough games to warrant that sort of consideration? Cam Rising and Jalen Daniels, we've both seen them do it at a really high level in the sport, Cam Rising in particular, but it will have been like 600 plus days by the time he actually takes a snap since the last time he took a snap for Utah, and is coming off a major knee surgery and is in his 7th year. I mean, I that's enough for me to make me raise an eyebrow and be like, all right, I need to see that this guy can be the same. Jalen Daniels has never played he's averaged like 6 games played a season in his time at Kansas. So he's getting about half a season in there. Can he stay healthy for an entire year? Avery Johnson at K-State, I think, has a sky-high ceiling, but we need to see it. He was a true freshman last year. KJ Jefferson is one of the more proven quarterbacks in the league for sure. I think it's a great question to ask that. Some of it too is like if I'm getting in with Gus, who I know can run an offense and put together a really electric offense in the SEC, like, man. I would say if I get the combo of Gus and KJ Jefferson, I will take those two. If it's you get random generated coach here and you need to take one of those two quarterbacks, I suppose I would take my chances with the coach being able to work with the NFL upside there of Shedeur. But I think it's a really good hypothetical.
It's a fair question.
All right, John, let's talk a little bit more about something you just started recently. It's called the Open for Business newsletter. I had a chance to subscribe recently, but tell folks more about that project, kind of what you're doing and how they can kind of follow along or get involved with the new newsletter.
Yeah, well, first of all, hey, I really appreciate that. And it is a new venture that I'm doing for Big 12 fans. So obviously I've been on YouTube for a while. It's pretty Big 12 focused there. I'm a Big 12 guy. I covered K-State for 10 years full-time in some capacity now for pushing 15 years. Been a Big 12 fan my entire life, attended the first Big 12 football game in 1996. So it's my passion. I love the league, and I wanted a chance to write a little bit. And the thing that I've really tried to market this toward is people like, and I get it these days, if you're trying to follow news in college football right now, it's really hard to not get it coming at you through a Big Ten or an SEC lens. Like they are going to get so much of the priority in terms of the coverage and just how everything is packaged. I wanted to be able to provide a news source for Big 12 fans where it's like, hey, this is the news that matters to the Big 12. Not only like here are the headlines that you may not be, here are the major headlines and here's how they affect the Big 12 as opposed to the Power 2. And then here are some other headlines that you may not be seeing at ESPN, CBS Sports, whatever it might be, because nobody cares enough about the Big 12 at a national level. And then give you my analysis, give you my take on everything that's happening there. Been doing some fun stuff with it too. I did an anonymous player survey at Big 12 Media Days. That's the team I forgot. I don't think I said Arizona. That just jogged my memory earlier on. I think I'm going to have to change it to 8 that can win the Big 12 because I forgot Arizona. I don't want Arizona fans to be mad at me. The players in the anonymous survey picked Arizona to win the league if they couldn't pick themselves. So that was what jogged my memory there. But I did toughest place to play, coach you'd want to play for in the league, would you want to play for Coach Prime? All that stuff is coming up. So if you want to hear some just unfiltered quotes and opinions from players on all that stuff, that's coming in there too. But that's kind of the goal for it. If you want to sign up, it's ofbnews.com. So ofbnews.com, like open for business, ofbnews.com to get signed up. Would love to have you and give it a shot. So really appreciate you guys giving me a chance to talk about that.
Yeah, and quickly, you mentioned your YouTube stuff as well. I know you're live, Wednesdays and Sundays. Where can people find you on YouTube? As I said off the top, you cover the Big 12 as good as anybody out there too. So if you want Big 12 content, where can they find you on YouTube? Yeah,
that one's pretty easy. Just John Curts, JohnKurtz on YouTube. Hop over there, get subscribed. The live shows are really fun. I mean, you can just watch the content whenever. You don't have to be there live, but if you want to take part in the chat, there's usually couple hundred people in there mixing it up, and it's a really, really good time. So those are Wednesday and Sunday nights, usually around 8 o'clock Central, the kick time for those. So yeah, and you can find me on Twitter, JL Kurtz, JLKURTZ too.
John, appreciate it as always. Thanks for hopping in. Hopefully we can catch up with you later on down the road, but have a great start to the Big 12 kickoff season.
Yeah, sounds great. Great to see you guys in Vegas, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. All right, John Curts. Again, it's a really cool newsletter. I had a chance to subscribe, I think it was yesterday, and read through some of the stuff. He has the article up now about toughest place to play. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's a stadium named after a dead guy. That's the only thing, which could be a lot, I guess. I don't really know how many stadiums are named after dead guys. But who is not dead, Brian, luckily for us, is our good friends Clay and Andrew, who do Up All Night every week, every Sunday, releases at 9 o'clock. And they have an interesting spin, a unique kind of look at everything going on in the UCF universe. So let's take a teaser at what it is that these two are up to late at night.
And Wake Forest football, can't wait for that.
I'll just meet Xavier Townsend. This is his name.
Oh, a massage competition. All right, who you letting? What Big 12 running back you letting give you a massage?
Beck was also a true freshman. The guy pictured in the photo, and he was good.
He was damn good, I'd say.
Ooh, you're short, brother. You are short.
This is honestly not bad. This isn't bad.
Not sure how they got it on Big 12 running backs to give you a massage. Brian, do you have an opinion on that?
I do not. I'm going to I'm gonna pass
You don't want to get aggregated because I'm going to clip that and use it against you a later time. But again, Up All Night with Clay and Andrew drops every Sunday 9 p.m. You can catch that on our YouTube channel. I see a smiling Trace Choco in my window here. I hope that means he's ready for us to go back to him and see what's happening back at Burger U, because that's where he's at. Let's bring in Trace Choco with the aforementioned one IPA.
There it
that
is.
is Sons of UCF a payment account allows him to purchase. Trace, what's the latest at Burger U? Looks like the crowd is thinning out there.
The crowd is changing, actually. The Cure Bowl has
There's
dissipated.
Clay. I see that guy.
Clay's here, Dolly's here, and Ladies' Night is winding down, and a lot of those ladies are now coming to Burger U.
Hey, ladies.
Whoa. Okay.
By the way, if Brian gets to escape getting cut up as a meme, why do you get cut? You'll get cut up as a meme, Adam. I'm a little lost not being able to stare directly at you during a live show.
There's a guy behind you if you want to go stare at that guy. I don't know. Is that Dolly? I can't tell. Go stare at him. Go stare at him.
Earlier, though, when we came to you, we talked about Scout School, put on by the Cure Bowl, a sponsor of the Sons of UCF, in which they talked with members of their Orlando Sports Foundation about scouting out teams in American, Conference USA, the MAC, and the Sun Belt. I had an opportunity to talk with a seasoned scout to explain what it's all about.
All right, Mike. So, Scout School. What's involved in being a scout for a bowl like the Cure Bowl?
One of the things I want to emphasize is that almost anyone can do it. There's very little barriers to entry. There's not much of a learning curve. Basically, you have to be a member of the Orlando Sports Foundation. You have to attend our Scout School, which is about 1 hour training, and then you have to just pick the games you want to scout. There are 4 different conferences that feed into the Cure Bowl. I'm the lead scout for Conference USA, and you can visit the school through the Orlando Sports Foundation. We'll grant a media request for you to come to the game in advance, and your ticket's paid for. Admission to the press box is paid for. You get a free meal out of it, and then you just got to basically go watch the game and write a one-page scouting report about what you see.
A one-page report?
That's it.
So you're looking for fan attendance, how the visiting team comes to the games?
Absolutely. I mean, it's great to go and watch the game and pretend you're a sportscaster or a member of the press or things like that, but what we're looking for is attendance, fan engagement, and how we think these teams would play if invited to the Cure Bowl, and how we think their fans would travel, and how we think they'd add to the Cure Bowl atmosphere. Not so much about balls and strikes and touchdowns and penalties, but more about the fan experience.
How much fun has this been for you to do it for a couple of seasons?
It's been amazing. My day job is being an attorney, so I love on the weekends traveling to great places in the Southeast and even at other areas of the country, watching the teams play, writing a scouting report, and helping to be part of the Cure Bowl experience.
What's the most exciting game you've seen so far doing this?
A couple of years ago, I went up to Wallace-Bryce Stadium in South Carolina. I watched App State upset South Carolina on their home field, and they eventually, after many years of trying to get them, got them to the Cure Bowl last year. We had a great time. Our fans was great. It was a great experience.
What do you most like being a part of this foundation and the Cure Bowl, knowing that they're helping to raise funds for cancer research?
I mean, the Cure Bowl, there are lots of bowl games, and it's what college football is about, that have a charitable purpose. But the Cure Bowl is the only bowl game in which finding a cure for breast cancer is expressly built into the mission of the bowl game. It underscores everything we do. And so to be part of this great experience, which is college football, to be a fan, to be a scout, to also know that we've helped raise over $4.1 million for breast cancer research is what it's all about. All in one package. You get your college football fandom and you get the charitable purpose all in one.
So, Trace, have you signed up for Scout School yet, Trace? I mean, it seems like it's a pretty sweet gig, no?
It is a pretty sweet gig. This game is going to be celebrating its 10th anniversary. They've raised more than $4 million. The game coming up December 20th. As I mentioned, Ladies' Night winding down, and we are now, I'm going to turn the camera, Clay's going to help me. It is Britt's birthday. Jan and Britt here are many of the ladies that have participated in Ladies' Night. And happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Britt. Happy birthday to you. All right, so we were able to bring that moment to you live from Burger U. Trace Choco, Sons of UCF Live.
All right, Trace, enjoyed the celebration. Happy birthday to Britt. Brian, I think that's the first ever birthday celebration we've had on the Sons of UCF.
It might be. Was that a football cake? Is that what does it look like? It looked almost like a football field. I couldn't quite see it.
Yeah, knowing Britt, how big a football fan she is, I imagine that has to be
to
be a football cake. But let's go a little bit of around the kingdom here, Brian. There are a couple of dates for everyone to know. Some football dates now being announced. So you've got Fan Fest coming up on the 4th. You got the kickoff pep rally on the 2nd, and you've got the kickoff luncheon August 16th. So some UCF events for football now being announced. So everyone put your calendars together. Brian, are you normally are you a Fan Fest guy? I know I've been the last couple. I don't think I've seen you there. Are you making a cameo this year at Fan Fest?
I might be convinced to make a cameo at Fan Fest. I've actually never attended a Fan Fest just because of the timing during the year. I have been to several kickoff luncheons, and those are pretty fun to attend. They're not easy to get into. You gotta pay per plate for that one, but those are a lot of fun. But yeah, I might be considering Fan Fest this year if I can get up there.
Just tell me you're with the Wayne Dench Trust, and they'll let you right in. One of the interesting things that was announced at Big 12 Media Day was sort of an advisory council for the Big 12, former student athletes, and UCF's two, appointees have been named. Shaquem Griffin and Taco Fall are going to be part of that Big 12 council, which is really cool. More info to come on that as they kind of build that out, but good to have Shaquem and Taco representing UCF. Speaking of good things for UCF, defensive back William Wells nominated among 170 other players for the All-State AFCA Good Works team, recognizes college football players for their commitment to service in their community. So kudos to William Wells for that nomination. And I'm sure if there's a voting prospect here, I'm sure UCF will help get William into that final category. And Brian, interesting news that popped this week. John Rice Plumlee drafted 3rd overall by the UFL's Arlington Renegades. To be clear, he is still technically right now on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster. I think they go to training camp within the next week or so. But as an undrafted free agent, he is eligible to be selected in the UFL draft. This does not mean that he wants to play there. This does not mean that he co-signed this. It just simply means now that Arlington owns his rights if and when he ever wants to go to the UFL. Brian, what did you make of this move when you saw that the Renegades, who are coached by former Oklahoma coach Bob Stoops, took a flyer on John Rice Plumlee at quarterback, I should mention,
as their first pick, I believe.
Yes, 3rd overall. Yep.
Yeah. So I saw the announcement that the Renegades had drafted him, and much like most other people, my initial thought was, wait, does that mean he's not a part of the Steelers roster anymore? And quickly I found out that he was still part of the 90-man roster as of the time of this recording anyway. So, but if you're John Rice Plumlee, you got to feel pretty good about your chances, right? To at least continue to play professional ball, right? Even if it doesn't work out in Pittsburgh, you can still fall back and go play in the XFL, knowing that they've picked you with their first pick of the draft for 2024. I was not surprised, but also surprised, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he can do both, right? He can be on a roster and play in the UFL. I mean, AJ McCarron famously was on the Bengals roster, got released, and went and played for, I believe, the St. Louis Battlehawks. So he can do both, but options now presenting themselves for our friend John Rice Plumlee. And lastly, the Major League Baseball draft took place this past week, Brian. Niger Victor, 14th round pick for the LA Angels, and Chase Santella, a 20th round pick for the Florida Marlins. All right. Do you watch Around the Kingdom, Brian? Are you familiar with that program starring one Trace Trelko and one Eric Lopez?
I am familiar with Around the Kingdom.
This week, Eric Lopez said something this may be the most controversial thing I think I've ever heard Eric say, and that's coming from a guy who once wrote that we owe Johnny Dawkins more than he owes us. This may be the most controversial thing I've heard from Eric Lopez's mouth. I'll let you all listen to it if you have not yet checked it out.
I do think he is the best quarterback that UCF has had since Mackenzie Milton. And yeah, I'm including Dylan Gabriel.
Better than Dylan Gabriel?
Absolutely.
Heisman contender?
This guy absolutely will be a Heisman contender. If he's healthy in UCF.
KJ Jefferson's going to be a Heisman contender for UCF.
He can be, absolutely. In this offense.
Well, anybody can be.
Better than Dylan Gabriel. How many big games did Dylan win here?
Listen, those two don't argue like that very often on the show, Brian. But where do you stand? Eric Lopez's contention that KJ Jefferson is already the second best UCF quarterback, never taking a snap, by the way, behind one Mackenzie Milton.
Listen, the thing about Elo is he knows his sports, okay? So when he said that, I watched the show this week, as I always do. And when he said that it got me really fired up for the season. I'm ready to go. If he has that much faith in KJ before the season has even started, then, we're going to have a great season. Now, to his point, okay, are you going to put him ahead of Dillon Gabriel? He hasn't taken a snap yet. He makes a valid point, right? How many big games did Dillon Gabriel win when he was here? I don't care that he plays for Oregon now, or is it Cal, or is it Oklahoma? He transferred to so many schools, I can't keep track anymore. I don't care if he's one of the top quarterbacks in contention for the Heisman before the preseason starts. Don't give me that. All right, show me some talent, show me some grit, and if Eric thinks that KJ's got that, then he's got my vote.
Oh, okay. All right. I mean, he has yet to take a snap, so maybe we should let him play a game first before we anoint him the second best.
Reckless speculation.
I love it. No, that's what we're here for. Speaking of things that are speculative, our Instagram account is such now because it's run by Clay Pasco. But if you have not subscribed to us on Instagram, check that out. Clay's doing a great job. Bunch of reels, bunch of different posts that are up there. So appreciate Clay for that. And if anyone's clamoring for some Suns merch, like the very shirt I have on now, you can go find that at night-fan.com. or also on sonsofUCF.com. We have shirts, we have hats, we have mugs. I think this hat that's behind me there, the middle one, you can get on that website as well too. So for what you need in your life is Suns merch. God bless you, by the way. You can go find some again, night-fan.com. This is awkward every time you're on the show, Brian, because it's that time again, but you're also here. So it's still that time, but it's not that time. But now you're doing the penguin dance, and so I need to take you off screen.
So it's a mailbag. So what?
So what? Do you know whose mailbag that is?
It's that time again. Time to open the Brian W. Peterson Sons of UCF mailbag.
I'm too sexy for my shirt. Oh, hell yeah.
All right, so I've got to do. Let me switch views right here. I'm going to add Trace, and he's muted. I just want you all to watch Trace's face for the rest of the show because he hates the fact that, unfortunately, I have not yet had the time to go back and edit out that clip there. So you all can shocking. I know you all can watch Trace enjoy the rest of the show here at Berg.
He didn't hold you hostage in Vegas and make you change that while you guys were there.
No, he brought it up like 9 or 10 times. But again, there's just a lot going on, Brian. A lot of videos I have to do. I mean, I'm getting to it. I promise. One of these days.
You're a busy guy. We get it.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to it. It's gonna happen, but that day is not today. But let's head to the mailbag here from @JP Gilbert. Wants to know what my chest and shoulder workout routine is. JP, I wish I had some great rhythm for you here. I've got a lot of leg injuries, so I typically work upper body a lot more than lower body. So maybe overtraining, but if you want a good chest finisher, Brian, I can help you out. You ready for this? Here's what I need you to do. Take your bench press. Let's just say you're going to do, 135 rep out of 135, right? Cut that in about half or maybe like 3/4. And here's what you do as a finisher, right? You start with 10 reps. You knock out 10 reps, and then you hold the bar extended above you and count to 10. Lower the bar, do 9 reps. Hold the bar at the top again, count to 10. Do 8 reps, count to 10. 7 reps, count to 10. So you've got that isometric hold at the top. You kind of locked out there. That'll fatigue your pecs very, very much and your arms. That can get you a little post-workout pump. So a little tip.
You're lacking the elbows when you do that?
We're locked out, bro. We're locked out up here. We're right here.
I always go to failure.
Rock out. Well, you could do. A guy like you, I can tell you're busting out of that. What is gold, people? That's not yellow. That is a gold shirt. Patrick Nurse wants to know who got the most steps in during the week. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Trace was counting his steps. I got like 10 to 12,000 a day while we were there. I don't know if Trace is counting. Looks like he's shaking his head. No, I don't think Robert counted his steps either. So 10 to 12 for me. Who was the best dressed among UCF players, Brian? You saw the fits, as the kids say, of all the UCF players. Who was best dressed? They
were all pretty good looking. I don't know. That was the talk, right? They kind of showed up Dion in the Colorado game by coming dressed to the nines. They were all looking pretty good. Who was wearing? Somebody was wearing a white jacket. I can't recall who it was now.
That was Lee Hunter. Lee Hunter had on the white jacket.
Yeah. The big guy knows.
Yeah, KJ Jefferson had on a giant chain charm that I have no idea what the KMT stood for. And Deshaun Pace, shout out to him. He was wearing pink because he has a daughter on the way. I thought that was a nice touch. Let's go to Robert MMIII. I'm sure that's some sort of Roman numeral that I did not use. If FSU ended up in the Big 12, would that automatically become a UCF FSU rivalry?
Depends on who you ask. If you ask UCF, yeah. If you ask FSU, they deny it.
You got to see all of the coaches, Brian, at Big 12 Media Day. If you had to replace Gus with a current Big 12 coach at 2 letters, 2 words wants to know, who would be your first pick to replace Gus with of the current Big 12 coaches, and who would be your last pick?
My first pick would probably be Gundy, just because he'd give you all kinds of sound bites that you could play with. He knows offense. My last pick would probably be who's the Iowa State head coach, Mr.
That is
Tan.
Mr. Coppertone himself, Matt
Yeah,
Campbell.
Mr. Tan. Yeah, I'm going to take Matt Campbell off because there's no way he was in Iowa during the offseason, like you pointed out.
Not a moment spent at Ames, Iowa. At black and gold _Ed. Most coaches seem like skilled politicians with standard talking points. Who is the most authentic coach that you heard from, Brian? Who told you something enlightening? Who is somebody that you think doesn't just give you canned answers and responses?
I think you got to go with Dion, right? I think he kind of says it like it is, or at least as he feels that it is. You can't really get tired hearing him talk. I know that the Muzz, you either like him or you don't like him, but I feel like he gives you real answers. What he said about Gus was pretty down to earth, and we hadn't heard about Gus when he was recruiting Shedeur Sanders. He mentioned that he took him and said, "Let's throw the ball. Let's see how you do." I mean, that's some good insight.
Listen, I'm not going to act like I became friends with Dion in our time in Vegas, but I will say this. I walked into that thinking one thing about Dion. He was personable. He was affable. He waved at people. He tried to stop and shake hands. Now, to be fair, he had handlers with him at all times, kind of moving him around. And also, to be fair to him, if he stopped and talked to everybody who wants to talk to him, he might still be there right now because the crowds were that large. But he waved, shook hands. I got a little fist bump from him. He took time. He met with a couple of smaller media members, like our guy Dukes the Scoop, and did one-on-one. So I walked away with a different impression of Dion than I probably went there with. I think my answer, though, may be Mike Gundy, although I could use him not giving me a breakdown of blood alcohol content. But I might go Mike Gundy on that one, Brian, who had a great answer to that question about Ollie Gordon, and then got to the ESPN set and just turned into Post Malone. I don't know what happened. He had such a good answer early on. Mike Gundy, though, always good for a laugh. At Zeebles UCF says, like Aaron Rodgers, Trace has used PTO to go on mind-altering vision trips because he identified the truth that Gus is always good for at least 4 losses, Brian. If that is indeed true, which Trace seems to think it is, how long is that acceptable for our program that we're going to have 4 losses every year?
It depends on who you're asking, right? If you ask us, the fans, probably not very long, right? We don't want to see 4 losses in a season. If you're asking Terry, who has to buy out that contract, he's probably going to say, give him another season. Let's let him try again. Look at the recruiting classes he's bringing in. So that's a tough one to answer. But as a fan, you obviously don't want 4 losses. And we lost Adam. So now it's just me and Trace, who is hanging out in the background there.
You are good, bro. You are back. You are good. Yeah, I was just trying to see if Trace was paying attention. All right, we have our next question. This one's kind of self-serving, but I'll answer because it's been asked a lot. Golden Knight _2, 2-part question. Again, Trace is not answering because I think he's having some what I assume is gluten-free cake right there. 2-part question: how many tireless hours a week do you dedicate to providing content, interviews, and whatnot to Knight Nation? Trace is memeing or miming out there a lot. I try to do the math. It's probably like 20, 25 a week, somewhere in there, depending upon the week and what's happening. Trace obviously is kind of our man on the scene, so he's at some press conferences, more not. But I think I'm committed to 5 hours of talking into this microphone a week at least, plus videos and whatnot. So probably 20, 25. In our day jobs, I have a little bit more flexibility. I work from home in a corporate setting, so I have some time to post some stuff. Trace is able to flex the schedule to get out to events as well. So either way, it's a lot of fun for us to be able to provide that and do that. So it sometimes is a late
whatever
vlog.
You see Adam doing on screen, at least double the amount of time is spent off screen preparing and editing and posting and doing all that fun stuff. So we tip our hat to you and to Trace and to UCF Mike.
You're not wearing a hat, but thanks, Brian. At Mr. Matt Dolan, Wednesday is National Tattoo Day, Brian. If you had to get a UCF-related tattoo, what would it be? Where would you put it? And I assume it's going to be gold, yes?
Ooh, yeah. Can you do gold tattoos? I guess you could, right? You can do any color you want. I guess it has to be a gold tattoo. I'm gonna have to go with the Pegasus. Give me the gold Pegasus.
Okay. And I'm going to rue the day I asked this question out loud, Brian. What body part are you going to put that Pegasus on?
No, we'll give me classic shoulder.
Going classic upper shoulder?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Brian with a Pegasus. I may go Citronaut just to make our friend JP Gilbert have some fun here. So that is Mailbag, Brian. This is our time now for. Have you done this segment? I think you've done this before. Yes.
What's in the box? Of course.
What's in the box? Brought to you by our good friends at Charlie Hustle. Promo code TEN1215 gets you 15% off your first order or your non-sale order, Brian.
You know that Charlie Hustle pullover that I've got, the hoodie that I've got, is the best hoodie that I have in my collection.
All right. Here's this week's question, Brian. I don't even remember this one. At a restaurant, should you leave your napkin on the table to let your server waiter know that you are done?
When you're done eating?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Is that the universal sign? The napkin on the table is how you let them know that. Do you put it on the table, or does it go on the covering the plate of food that you just ate?
So it's been a while. I did have when I was a trustee, I did take an etiquette course through UCF.
Of course you did.
And two things that I remember are the placement of silverware. You need to be very careful in a formal setting that your knife, as you lay it on your plate, it is not blade out. That is offensive. It is blade in towards the plate. When you are done, your fork and your knife go at about 4 o'clock on your plate, and then your napkin goes out of your lap. That signifies that you are done. Yes, you have to do all of that. And
all at Chili's, I have to do all that.
Order a Presidente margarita or two, and maybe you forget those things. You know.
What's the last time you've been to Chili's, by the way, Brian?
2 weeks ago, Presidente margarita.
Wow. I see Dolly there. This trace cam, by the way, is paying off in spades. I see Dolly there.
Can he hear us? Can they hear us?
Trace can hear us, I believe. Dolly and Trace can hear us. Dolly cannot. Clay cannot. I don't think anybody else can hear us there either. Did you get a degree in cordiality? Asked Robert.
I did not get a degree in cordiality.
Can I also tell the audience, I should say thank you to Robert, who joined Trace and I out in Vegas and spent countless hours helping us get interviews, put content together, talk to coaches. I told the story in the pod. First day, Trace and I go walking into the Bellagio, and there is Robert, who has somehow found Brett Yormark and is having a conversation with him. The only thing I would tell you is if you're going to be...
He got some good information.
He did. If you're going to be gambling with Roberts, prepare yourself, right? Hydrate. We got a picture being taken here. What's happening here? I need to, what are we doing there?
We need this more often.
I do. I think we need a Trace cam more often. He's on the show usually with, who else is in this picture?
That's the thing with the question about who got more steps in Vegas. I would have gone with Trace. I mean, I've been with him on a game day. The man does not stop moving.
Yeah. He probably got some good steps in. I don't think he counted. We also, again, if you're ever in Vegas, by the way, the Mirage is closed, and so rest in peace on the Mirage. We stayed there, nowhere near the Bellagio, and so that was quite a hefty walk each night for Trace and I to get back to the Bellagio. Hopefully, they enjoy that group hug. But Brian, I appreciate you hopping in and always supporting the live show while Trace is live on the scene. Big thanks to you, Brian. Big thanks to Trace, Dolly, and Clay, who seem to be having a grand old time right now. John Curts for joining the show. Everybody out there for comments, questions, and just a big thanks to everybody for following along on our media day coverage. A lot of fun to be out there representing UCF and seeing what's happening in Vegas, talking about our night. So big thanks to everyone who followed along with that. And we'll see you all soon. Everybody go Knights.
Charge on.
You know, Trace always has this segment that he calls the walk and talk. Well, let me introduce you to the roll and stroll. And on that note, I'm Andrew Cherico, and thank you for watching the Sons of UCF.
There's Andrew Cherico, the other star of Up All Night. I see Clay on screen. Brian, no, Clay can't hear you, by the way. Who do you think the star of Up All Night is? Is it Andrew or is it Clay?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to go with Andrew. He's the aspiring journalist. He's the one that brings the hard-hitting facts. Yeah.
Sorry, Clay. Well, not that when he's going to do that, it's definitely Andrew because Clay looks like an idiot.
Yeah, look at that. He's like, "What? Are you talking about me?"
It's basically UCF Mike, but 20 years younger. Yeah, exactly.